Hello Universe. Today I wanted to make a video which goes over my entire grad school application process and how I applied to grad schools. As some of you know, I had a decent amount of success. I was rejected from most of the grad schools I applied to, but I was accepted to UCLA's PhD program among University of Tennessee, University of Utah, Michigan State, as well as the University of Alberta. And ultimately, I decided to go to the University of Alberta for mathematical physics since it better aligned with my long-term interests. So the purpose of this video is actually threefold. The first purpose of this video is to qualify myself as a tutor. So you're going to get to see the exact courses I've taken with the textbooks. I'm going to show you my grades and my awards and just my full resume, almost like I'm applying to you as a tutor. Okay. Now, the second purpose of this video is to help students that are just entering their math and physics education. Maybe they don't know too much about what courses to take or, the right track to follow. And I can't offer perfect advice on that, but I can offer my own experience and the track that I followed throughout my education. And then the third purpose of this video is for those of you who are nearing the end of your math and physics education, so like juniors and senior undergraduate students that are getting ready to apply for grad schools. Now, when you're getting ready to apply for grad schools, I highly recommend that you keep things organized and you apply to as many graduate schools as your budget allows. Personally, I come from a privileged background, and so I was able to apply to around 25 graduate schools. Now, the way that I chose the graduate schools that I applied to, and let's see which ones I applied to. So first of all, I had a folder called grad school applications. So I kept everything organized, and this made the process much more efficient. If we open up this folder, okay, we can look at all the grad schools that I applied to. So you have this list here: Alberta, Chicago, Duke, Florida, Georgia, Harvard, MIT, MSU, Nebraska, NYU, Oregon, Oregon State, Princeton, Tennessee, Texas, Toronto, UBC, UC Boulder, UCLA, UCSB, USC, Utah, Washington, and Wisconsin. Okay, so how did I choose these schools? Why did I choose this list of schools? Well, the answer is that I had an undergraduate advisor. Okay, and I'm not talking about an advisor appointed by the department to help you choose classes. Talking about a professor, in particular, my advisor's name was Will Feldman, that I reached out to. I took his graduate course in partial differential equations, and I really enjoyed the class. I really enjoyed his teaching style. And so I reached out to him after class and asked him if there were any opportunities for research or additional learning that I could do with him. And so we began a reading program where once a week I would meet with this professor, Professor Feldman, and we would go over a weekly reading essentially and talk about advanced topics, which presumed the knowledge of the graduate course in partial differential equations. And in that reading course, we covered several advanced topics, but the most interesting one, or the one that appealed to me the most, was this topic, optimal transport. And so once Professor Feldman kind of figured out my interests and understood what I like and what motivates me, he was able to recommend, based on his knowledge and his connections in the field, he was able to recommend a list of around 15 universities, which he thought had the right people and the right advisors to suit my interest. And so that was the list that I used to apply for grad schools. I didn't just randomly apply to these schools. I was recommended to apply to these schools by my advisor. Um, and then I additionally applied to about 10 backup schools, kind of at random, schools that I liked, schools that I'd heard about, just because I was scared that I wouldn't get in anywhere, and I wanted to kind of maximize my likelihood of just getting in somewhere. Okay. Um, so the process for application is essentially I created folders for all these different schools. Then I also had some general documents, and these general documents are what we're going to go through today. So first of all, we're going to go to my completed course list. Okay, so you should make a completed course list with the courses that you've taken that are relevant to your field. Okay, so we're going to go through the courses that I took, and I have the course, the professor, and the textbook listed here. Okay, so I started with Calculus 3. The textbook, as you can see, was Calculus with Differential Equations by Varberg, Purcell, and Rigdon. Then I moved to Linear Algebra and Discrete Math in the next semester. So Discrete Math, for those of you who don't know, this course here is kind of an introduction to proof writing and mathematical logic. That was extremely helpful for me as a prerequisite to jump into analysis. And so you can see the textbook by K.H. Rosen, Discrete Mathematics and Its Applications, 7th edition. Now, I also took a course in linear algebra, and linear algebra is a critical subject in math. It's one of the most important subjects that you can study because it shows up in literally every field that you could possibly want to go into as a mathematician. Okay? So the reason why linear algebra is so important is because in math, linear algebra is something that we can understand and compute. We can do the matrix algebra. We have computers that can do matrix multiplication. And so there's a lot of systems or mathematical models which we can approximate by linear systems. And so knowing how to do linear algebra and knowing how to do linear algebra efficiently is critical. Okay, and you can see the textbook by D. Lay, S. Lay, and J. McDonald, Linear Algebra and Its Applications. All right, then in the summer, and I recommend you take summer classes if you have the money to afford it. This summer course I took, Introduction to Differential Equations. The textbook was Differential Equations and Boundary Value Problems, Computing and Modeling by Edwards, Penny, and Calvis, 5th edition. I really like this textbook and I would highly recommend it. And this is also an important course. Now in the fall, I went ahead and took Foundations of Analysis 1. This is kind of our weeder class in the math department. It's the first class that really gets you into, mathematical proof writing and kind of changes the way you see what advanced math looks like. Away from a calculation, algorithmic based learning process towards a more creative and challenging kind of proof writing process where there's more flexibility in how you arrive at the correct answer. Okay. The textbook here was Foundations of Analysis by Joseph L. Taylor, 2012. So next, I went ahead and took Foundations of Analysis 2, and the textbook for this course was Rudin's, what's called Baby Rudin, so Walter Rudin's Principles of Mathematical Analysis, 3rd edition. This is an excellent textbook, and this class, I really learned a ton from this class. Next course was Introduction to Probability. I took also in the spring semester of 2022, and this professor is excellent. He actually has a YouTube channel you should check out. If you look up on YouTube, Dr. Sean Grothaus. He has a YouTube channel, I think, that's quite successful in math. He also tutored me privately several years later in advanced real analysis. He's an excellent mathematician, and I'd highly recommend you check out his channel. Now, the textbook for the course was Introduction to Probability by Anderson, Sapalainen, and Valko, which again is an excellent textbook, and I've done some videos on some of the early problems in this textbook on the combinatorics stuff. Okay, then also in that spring semester, I took Nonlinear Dynamics and Chaos Theory, and the textbook here was Nonlinear Dynamics and Chaos by Stephen Strogatz. I loved this textbook, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone, whether you're self-studying math or whether you are learning math through an institution. This is an excellent textbook, and it's written in a very qualitative way, in a way that's very friendly to the reader, and kind of really enjoyable. It's totally different from any other math textbook I've read in the sense that it's way more qualitative, but it covers a wide breadth of material and gives you a huge and extremely valuable skill set in terms of qualitative analysis of nonlinear dynamics and chaos. Okay. So then in the summer, I took PDEs for engineers. This is kind of an introductory level PDE course. Separation of variables is the emphasis, and just starting to understand, okay, the heat equation, the wave equation, and the Laplace equation. And the textbook here is another great textbook, Applied Partial Differential Equations with Fourier Series and Boundary Value Problems by Richard Haberman. Okay, excellent textbook. I'd highly recommend it. Now, also in the summer, I took Applied Complex Variables, and the textbook here was Complex Variables and Applications by Brown and Churchill, 9th edition. This is also a great introductory textbook. Okay, then spring 2023, I took Statistical Inference 1. This is a more advanced statistics class. You can kind of tell by the numbers. The 5,000 level classes in our department are the upper level undergraduate courses, and the 6,000 levels are the graduate courses at our department. So this was an advanced statistics class. It was an excellent course, and the textbook was very challenging, but had great exercises. So the exercises in this textbook I'd highly recommend for those of you who are learning statistics. And this textbook is called Introduction to Probability and Mathematical Statistics by Bain and Engelhardt, 2nd edition. Okay, also in the spring 2023 semester, I took the Graduate Complex Analysis course. As a background, in the fall 2023, you might have seen I didn't list any courses fall 2023. Turns out I was taking about 5 or 6 courses, and I decided to withdraw from them because I was feeling kind of burnt out and I wanted to actually focus on this YouTube channel. But I did take real analysis during that time before I withdrew, and I kind of self-studied a lot during the time I was taking the class, and so that gave me enough background to take this complex analysis class at our department. Okay, and we used several textbooks to supplement. And as you can see, Alfor's complex analysis, Marshall complex analysis, and Stein and Shikharchi complex analysis. Okay, so I also made a math sheets for this class. So if you're interested in the topics we covered, because Professor Bespina covered a lot of topics kind of on his own accord and didn't follow the outline of these textbooks to exactly. So I made an outline of the full course notes, which I used to study for the final in this class, and it's on my mathsheets.com website. So you can check that out if you're interested. It's mathsheets with a Z.com. Okay. Now then, after this course, I went back fall 2023 and I retook the real analysis, which I had dropped in the previous term. Okay. I retook the real analysis, and this one we did use the textbook, Bolland Real Analysis Modern Techniques, 2nd edition. This is an excellent textbook, and I'd highly recommend it. It's quite advanced and difficult to learn from, and I made a video recommending real analysis textbooks that can supplement this textbook when you're first learning graduate real analysis, because this is a very hard textbook to just learn from scratch. But if you supplement this textbook with slightly easier graduate level real analysis textbooks, I really think this book is very fruitful and the proof techniques are extremely efficient. So if you want more details, you can check out my video on real analysis textbook recommendations. Then also in that same semester, I took the Graduate Differentiable Manifolds course, and this was also an excellent course. The textbooks used for this course were the textbooks by John M. Lee, Introduction to Smooth Manifolds, and the textbook by Loring Tu, also called An Introduction to Smooth Manifolds, or An Introduction to Manifolds. This textbook was a bit too difficult upon first reading. It was a bit too detailed for me, so I mainly used this book by Tu. And it's a funny story, I would go to the gym, actually, I'd go to the university gym, and I would be reading this textbook, and in between sets, it was kind of a hard textbook for me to read. So I'd read a few pages, then I'd do a set of curls, or I'd do a set of whatever I was working out. and then I'd read a couple more pages. Because I mean, this is a hard class, and this is a hard textbook to get through. I also used the lecture notes by Wang online. If you check out my video, I made a video recommending Manifold's textbooks, and in that video I covered some of the other resources that I used for this class, which are not mentioned here. Okay, so then in spring 2024, okay, so in spring 2024, I took Introduction to Modern Algebra 2. I skipped the first Introduction to Modern Algebra class because I self-studied it over the summer with a tutor, and I self-studied it using the first two to three chapters of this book, Algebra by Michael Arden. So this is an excellent textbook, Algebra by Michael Arden, and then another resource is Lectures on Abstract Algebra by Richard Ellman. Okay, also in spring 2024, I took the Graduate Partial Differential Equations course. The textbook for this course was a classic. This is Partial Differential Equations, second edition by Lawrence C. Evans. Now, when I was taking this course, that's when I met this professor, Will Feldman, who later became my undergraduate advisor after I reached out to him approximately like 2/3 of the way through the course, after I had already taken the midterm exam and done decently well in the midterm exam, although it was extremely hard and I didn't do perfectly. In fact, I didn't even do that great on it because it was such a difficult test. Um, and and yeah, this was just an excellent course, and I'm really glad and grateful to this professor, Will Feldman, for teaching this course and also helping me advise me in the semesters following that course. Okay, and then in the fall of 2024, this is no longer in progress. This course is done. I took the Graduate Introduction to Algebraic Geometry class. In order to prepare for this class, I self-studied over the summer commutative algebra, and even with that self-study, this was extremely hard course, and I probably was not fully prepared for this course. So I ended up actually getting an A- in this course, and ultimately I felt like it was too difficult for me because I didn't have the background in commutative algebra and graduate algebra needed to be truly successful in this course. But that withstanding, Professor Harold Bloom was an excellent professor. We followed the lecture notes by Algebraic Geometry by Gaffman, and um, we also followed the book. Near the end of the course, we began to start the book by Hartshorne, called I think Algebraic Geometry by Hartshorne. This is a classic book, and the homeworks were extremely difficult. This is probably the hardest or one of the hardest courses I took at our university. And for those of you who don't know, the University of Utah is one of the top programs in the world for algebraic geometry. That's why I took this course and why I rushed into this course without taking the proper prerequisites. It's because I really wanted to take it before I left our university, because our university is very well known for our algebraic geometry program. It's the University of Utah. So, and then I also took a supervised reading in category theory, and the textbook we used was Category Theory and Context by Emily Rao. Okay, so let's just talk about grades for a second. So for these courses, I was able to get all A's in all of these courses, except for this Introduction to Algebraic Geometry 1 course, in which case I got an A-. Now, I also completed supervised reading courses. So this is crucial if you want to be kind of get an extra leg up, or if you want to get ahead in a certain topic and kind of maximize your educational opportunity as an undergraduate, then near your junior or senior year, if you have the math background, you've taken the undergraduate classes, maybe you've taken one or two graduate level classes, you can reach out to the professors, especially the professors of those graduate level classes, and ask them to do reading courses, which go further and beyond the topics covered in the graduate course. Okay, so importantly, I reached out to Professor Kurt Vinage. Okay, and Professor Kurt Vinage was the teacher of my graduate differentiable manifolds course. I reached out to him and was able to do a supervised reading course in differential geometry. We used the textbook by DeCarmo. And then I also reached out again, as I mentioned, to Professor Will Feldman, and we did a reading course focusing primarily on optimal transport, and we went through the textbook Optimal Transport for Applied Mathematicians by Filippo Sanambrosio. Okay, so these reading courses were excellent experiences for me, like excellent experiences, and they really increased the quality of my education significantly. So I'd highly recommend that you try to pursue a supervised reading course once you've covered the undergraduate math curriculum and maybe taken one or two grad level classes. Okay. Um, all right, and then notice that the starred professors here, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but the starred professors were my recommenders. Don't tell anyone I told you that. All I want to mention is that the people that wrote my letters of recommendation, I'm very grateful that they did write me letters of recommendation, but it was important that I chose professors that taught my graduate courses. Okay, so I wanted to choose professors that had seen me take the advanced courses. Okay, so you really want to focus on, if you want people to write you letters, make sure that your letter writers are the professors that you've taken advanced courses with. Okay. Um, and then I should also note this is a little bit outdated, as you can see. This is how the document looked at the time of my application, which was in the beginning of this fall semester, is when I applied to all these graduate programs. Okay, so in the spring semester, I did another reading course with Professor Kurt Vintage. It was actually a seminar, and we did a seminar on dynamics using the textbook. Um, let me pull it up. Or I think, yeah, I'm forgetting the author's name of the textbook right now. I think, oh yeah, it's Katok and Hasselblad. So we used a textbook called Introduction to Dynamical Systems by Katok and Hasselblad, as well as a textbook called Introduction to the um, Axiom A diffeomorphisms, um, the ergodic theory of axiom A diffeomorphisms. So it was a reading course on ergodic theory and dynamics, or sorry, a seminar, and I was asked to give lectures for that seminar. It was extremely helpful for me to kind of read the textbook and then create a lecture that I would give to the seminar. And I gave about 3 or 4 lectures for that seminar during the spring semester, and I really spent a lot of time kind of working on those lectures, and it really helped my knowledge of dynamics. Okay, so let's move on to physics. Okay, so for physics, I started with Physics for Scientists and Engineers 1, and textbook was Physics for Scientists and Engineers 4th edition by Knight. Then in the spring, I took our Physics Lab 1, we coded in MATLAB. I also took a computational lab. This time they introduced us to Python. Um, and then in the same spring semester, I took the honors Physics for Scientists 2, and we used the textbook Physics for Scientists and Engineers by Surway and Jewett. Fall, I took a Physics Lab 2 for Scientists and Engineer, also done in MATLAB. And then in the fall, I took our undergraduate Introduction to Quantum and Relativity. We used the textbook Modern Physics by Tipler and Louis. Probably pronouncing these names wrong, so forgive me for any mispronunciations. Then in the spring 2022, took a course called Energy and Sustainability. Used the textbook Energy, Environment, and Climate by Richard Wolfson, 3rd edition. I also took the course Thermodynamics and Statistical Mechanics, and the textbook was An Introduction to Thermal Physics by Schroeder. Now in the fall 2022, I took the Classical Physics 1 course. This was a crucial class. So this was the semester I told you I withdrew from all my classes because I was burned out. Well, I lied a little bit. I withdrew from almost every class except for Classical Physics 1 because this was actually the last semester that was offered at my university, as they were doing a restructuring of the physics curriculum at the time. So I stayed in this class, and this class was utterly excellent. One of my favorite classes I've taken at the university. Professor Vikram Deshpande, I had done research with him in the past. I did condensed matter research, as you'll see on my resume, with this professor. But he was an excellent teacher for this class, and this really made me fall in love with physics. Um, Introducing the Lagrangian mechanics and introducing the calculus of variation formulation of Newton's laws really was mind blowing to me. And I think that classical physics is a key course in every physics student's education that really opens your eyes to the beauty of physics. And if you can make it this far and take classical physics 1, if you can make it this far in your physics education, I would say if you don't like these introductory physics classes, because personally I didn't I liked them, they were good classes, and I did enjoy them a lot, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people find them tedious and boring. But once you get to classical physics 1, almost no one that I know finds this class tedious and boring. I mean, this is just the physics itself is so beautiful that if you apply yourself, um, I mean, it's very hard not to fall in love with physics if you take a course like classical physics. Now, the textbook we used was an excellent undergraduate level textbook called Classical Dynamics of Particles and Systems by Thor- Thornton and Marion. Okay, I'd highly recommend this textbook for an undergraduate introduction to classical physics. And then in the spring, I took Classical Physics 2, and this was our electromagnetism course, or advanced undergraduate electromagnetism course. And the textbook we used was by David J. Griffith's Introduction to Electrodynamics. Now, I created a math sheet. If you remember, this was spring 2023 was also the time I was taking the graduate complex analysis. And I created a math sheet not only for that graduate complex analysis course, but I also made a math sheet for this course and basically summarized all of Griffith's um, in such a way that helped me prepare um, and and help consolidate the topics covered in the first, I think, 7 chapters of Griffiths. So you should go check that out on my website, mathsheets.com with a Z. Now, also in that spring, I took an Introduction to Gravitation course, and this course was opened my eyes as well, because all of a sudden we're getting into some differential geometry and some non-Euclidean geometry, totally changing our intuition and the way that we see kind of how physics works. And the textbook was Gravity: An Introduction to Einstein's General Relativity by James B. Hartle, 2021. It's a good undergraduate textbook. This is a great undergraduate textbook for general relativity. Okay, now in the fall 2023, I took Computational Physics 1. This was an excellent course. This was an advanced computational course with coding done in Python, and we did mostly statistics-based coding and data analytics. I loved this class. Um, this professor, John Bells, was excellent, and I ended up taking his graduate general relativity course later down the road. So, also in fall 2023, I took Introduction to Particle Physics, and the textbook here was The Basics of Nuclear and Particle Physics by Belyaev and Ross. So, I really like this textbook for kind of an undergraduate introduction to particle physics. It's a nice read. Um, it's not extremely technical. It's it's very much just emphasizing um, getting a good introduction for an undergraduate student. And there are some technical aspects of it. It's not an easy textbook per se, but it is quite introductory compared to some other books that you might find on particle physics. So if you're just looking to get into particle physics, you could read this textbook um, with like as a sophomore physics student or maybe a junior physics student. You don't need much of a physics background. You don't need a classical mechanics background, for example, to read this textbook. So you're kind of a freshman, sophomore physics student, you're looking to read a book on a more advanced topic that's accessible to you, I'd recommend this book. Now, Also in the fall, I took the undergraduate quantum mechanics course. This was an excellent and difficult course, and we followed Griffith's book Introduction to Quantum Mechanics, third edition. Excellent book. I mean, Griffiths is just a really good author for undergraduate physics in terms of his electrodynamics book and his quantum mechanics book. Highly, highly recommend these books to undergraduate physics students. Now, in the spring of 24, I took the graduate general relativity course. This course fully blew my mind. I cried when I was reading chapter 3 of this textbook because it was so beautiful. And this textbook, Spacetime and Geometry, An Introduction to General Relativity by Sean M. Carroll. It's one of my primary recommendations for a physics student. It does require some background in classical mechanics, so you need to have taken a classical mechanics course before you attempt to read this book. But it's just an incredible book. Now, and then the fall semester, I took the graduate quantum theory course. The textbook was Modern Quantum Mechanics by J.J. Sakurai. This is a classic textbook and an excellent textbook. I really love this textbook, and I'd highly recommend it. So then I also took the graduate quantum field theory course, and the textbooks, we used many textbooks on quantum field theory. I made a video going into all the resources that I used for this class, and you can check that out on my YouTube channel. It's like textbook recommendations for QFT. So yeah, this was one of the most difficult courses I've taken, computation-wise, and also conceptually. I still don't really understand quantum field theory. I was able to pass the course and get an A and pass the test, but ultimately this is such a difficult topic and requires so much background, so much intuition, and so much like time and dedication to understand that I'm not even close to understanding this topic. And this professor, Professor Zhang, told us at the beginning of the course that if you really want to learn quantum field theory, the first way to start would be to take the course 3 times. So, he knows the difficulty of the subject, and it's clear that it's so difficult you have to learn it over and over and over again. Now after I took these courses, there were follow-ups to these courses, but I did not take the follow-ups because I was burned out and I had to complete some general education requirements to get my degree. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to take the Quantum Theory 2 and the Quantum Field Theory 2 classes in spring. I instead took, I think, two gen eds, maybe 3 gen eds, and I took a physics lab. So I took an experimental physics lab where we conducted experimental physics, and it was an advanced experimental physics lab. That class was extremely helpful for me to kind of get some hands-on experience in experimental physics and data analytics and writing up, a lab report in a journal style format. Okay, and then in terms of grades, so I received A's in all these courses. Okay, so now let's go to next document on my grad school application. So let's go to my resume. Okay, so the way that I formatted my resume, I basically took a course, a general education course over the summer, and that general education course was like an introduction to business communications, I think. And one of the assignments for that course was make your resume. And so I used the template from this course to build my resume, and it was extremely helpful for me to do that. Okay, so as you can see, I have my title here. I have my contact information here, and then this is my website, mathsheets.com. I've mentioned it probably way too many times by now. So at the top, I have education. I have my um, um, different majors listed here, and so you have the Department of Mathematics, Bachelor of Science, Department of Physics and Astronomy, Bachelor's of Science in Physics. I have my current GPA listed at the time. That's not my overall GPA. Again, it's like a 3.98. I received two A minuses, one in the advanced algebraic geometry course, and the other A minus was in the experimental physics course that I took my final semester. Um, now, so yeah, so basically you just list your undergraduate coursework, you list your graduate coursework, and your GPA, and then same thing for physics. Okay. Um, Now, then after education at the top, then we have experience. So experience is just anything outside of the traditional class framework, the official class framework. So the first thing I included was the most relevant, I think, to a graduate program in math, um, and that's the reading courses that I did. So I mentioned this reading course supervised by my advisor, and then mentioned the books and topics that we went through. So you can take a look at these books. There's a book by San Ambrosio, a book by Villani, a book by Ambrosio, and a book by Maggi. And then I also posted a lecture notes on my mathsheets.com website where I actually gave a lecture on on the on this topic on optimal transport, and I put the lecture notes on my website. And then we also did some other topics. So we covered these lecture notes on viscosity solutions by Calder. This is a really nice topic to learn about if you like PDE. And then we also looked at lecture notes on entropic optimal transport by Marcel Nutt. So this was another great, really great series of lecture notes. And I plan to reread those lecture notes. I'm actually rereading them right now. So yeah. And then also I did the reading course in differential geometry. And so I listed that. I listed the times on the right here. You can see. Then I mentioned the lectures that I've given. So I gave a lecture on the path integral. I used Richard Feynman's book primarily to structure that lecture, but it was aimed at an undergraduate audience. So I kind of just looked at doing some perturbation theory and starting with the path integral, doing a first order perturbation, um, and deriving the Schrodinger equation. So, so that was a lecture that I gave February 2024, and then I also gave this Kantorovich formulation, which was aimed at a graduate slash professor level audience, um, primarily a graduate level audience in optimal transport, and that was given in September 2024. Okay, then I list my research background. So if you have any papers, you should obviously list that first. I wasn't able to publish any papers. I think that that's more important if you're applying to a physics PhD. For a math PhD, it's very difficult to publish a paper as an undergraduate, and so ultimately it's more important that you do things like reading courses. But for a physics PhD, I've heard that it's kind of important to have some papers published. But ultimately, my advice would be don't sacrifice what you love to do just to publish a paper. The goal of research is to improve your knowledge and gain experience rather than just to post a paper, to publish a paper so you can put it on your resume. Okay? Okay, so for my research, I did research in condensed matter physics for quite a long period of time. I started out my freshman year, and I worked with Professor Deshpande on twisted bilayer graphene heterostructures, which essentially are like these sort of um, material is like a new form of material, which is a monolayer of graphene, and then take two single layers of graphene and stack them on each other at a nice angle. This is what's called the magic angle. And under the right conditions, you can get superconductivity at low temperatures. So kind of an exciting new field in condensed matter physics. And I was just working in the lab as an undergraduate student and kind of learning getting some hands-on experience doing research in physics. Um, and then yeah, I eventually kind of got the process down to some degree and I had some experience, and so I was able to teach and train some other students in the lab. Um, and then I also put my tutoring experience. So I have a lot of tutoring experience. I have several years of tutoring experience since fall 2020. Essentially, during COVID, I started really getting serious about tutoring because I didn't like the online courses. So I stopped taking online classes and I just focused on tutoring, online tutoring instead. And so I tutored like a full time pretty much during COVID online, and then just continued tutoring after COVID at the University of Utah Math Center. And my tutoring focus was primarily math, although I did tutor a little bit of physics. I wish I tutored more, but yeah, I mainly focused on math tutoring. And then for a while, I had a private tutoring company as well. That's kind of dissolved. Um, but yeah, and then um, and then I also I founded this masteries.com. This is maybe not the best thing to put on my resume. It's kind of a little bit. It's a small business owner. I mean, yeah, you could call it a business, I guess. It's nonprofit, but um, yeah, you could call it a business. I guess I was kind of doctoring up my resume when I called it a small business owner. I don't know if that's accurate, but whatever. And then Okay, and then I do have some leadership experience as well. So I was president of the University of Utah Chess Club for a couple of years. I organized and supported funding for sending two teams to the Pan American International Chess Tournament 2021 through 22. So for those of you who don't know, I love chess. I've played chess since I was a child, and so I joined the University of Utah chess team, and it was a ton of fun. It was a great organization. For those of you, if you're at the U, you should check it out. They usually meet on Thursday nights. You can check out their website online. Um, and then I also founded something called the University of Utah Math Team. Me and my friend Will Plume basically co-founded the University of Utah Math Team, and then I put and I was the president from winter 2023 to current, and we met 3 times a week. We studied materials from this Putnam and Beyond, basically textbook by Gelka and Andreescu, extremely difficult textbook focused on competition math. So it was a lot of fun, and also Professor Milan Besvina donated some of his time to help us prepare for the competition math exams. So that was totally awesome that he was able to help us out the spring 2023 semester, and I'm really grateful that for his time in helping support our team. Okay, and then I also listed my awards. So I won the University of Utah math competition fall 2021, fall 2022. I won this undergraduate award for excellence in graduate classes. This is 2023 through 2024. I got top finisher in the Intermountain Math Competition 2022 through 23, the Intermountain Chess Tournament, tied for first place individual section 2023, and then undergraduate physics research. I won an award recipient of Outstanding Undergrad Award for Condensed Matter Biophysics or Physics Education Research, University of Utah in spring 2022. And then I listed some additional skills: background in Python, MATLAB, and C++. C++, I do have some background in, but I'm still kind of working on it. That's more of a long-term goal. But I think that I have enough background in coding that I can list these 3 languages, and I'd be able to, code mathematical algorithms in these 3 languages, although I'm not super specialized in them. Okay. All right. Yeah, and primarily where I learned these skills, especially Python, I'm not an excellent coder, but I can code, a basic algorithm and get things done. And I've taken several physics courses that taught me how to code and how to do the data analysis and how to do, some simulation type things on Python that are physics oriented. Okay, so that's my resume, and it's relatively short. You kind of want to keep it compact as possible, but notice that it is 2 pages long. So when you're applying to like graduate schools, you can kind of have a longer resume. Usually when you're applying to jobs, it should just be 1 page. But for graduate schools, you can have 2 to 3 pages on your resume. I think they call it a CV or something. There's a different word for it, but whatever. I'll call it a resume. Okay, so now let's take a look at statement of purpose. Okay, so I have some general documents here, and then for each of the universities, they're going to have some unique requirements and some unique expectations, and also some strengths that you want to kind of focus on when you write more personalized um, documents in your application. So for the University of Utah, I'm going to go ahead and read my statement of purpose. Okay, so here we go. We have the statement of purpose title with the contact information at the top, and then we have this formatted address and date, following manner, Times New Roman. All right, so I'm going to read you the full statement of purpose. To the admissions committee. My name is Conrad Morris, and I am currently completing a BS degree in mathematics and physics at the University of Utah. I'm applying to the University of Utah to pursue a PhD in applied mathematics. My broad interests lie in the fields of PDE, convex analysis, Riemannian geometry, and Lie groups with application to mathematical physics. Now let me pause here and unpack this statement. So it's important that I stated my broad interests because the reality is I'm just an undergraduate student, and so I don't actually know the exact topic that I want to pursue for my PhD. And when you start a PhD, you're going to be taking graduate courses and figuring out what your interests are. So you don't really need a specific research interest. Um, if you're applying to a PhD program, it's more important that you have some broad interests and recognize that, as an undergraduate student, you're not actually sure what field you're going to go into. You just need to have some idea of some of your interests, okay? All right, let's keep going. My specific mathematical interest lies in optimal transport theory. I plan to study the connections currently being formed between optimal transport theory and dynamics. Optimal transport provides novel variational structures which can lead to geometric insight into systems of PDE used to model dynamical systems. This is famously highlighted in Otto's realization that the heat equation is the gradient flow of the entropy functional with respect to the W2 metric. That's the Wasserstein 2 metric. I'm also interested in numerical methods in optimal transport, namely constructive algorithms to build near-optimal transport plans. One starting point is the Benamou-Brenier fluid dynamical formulation of optimal transport, which leads to a saddle point augmented Lagrangian numerical method. I have implemented this method numerically using Python. Entropic optimal transport is another starting point, leading to the Sinkhorn algorithm for building diffuse approximations to the optimal transport plan. In other words, I am motivated by quantitative, as opposed to qualitative, existence results in any variational model. Under the supervision of Professor Will Feldman since May 2024, I have read several texts on optimal transport theory, most notably Optimal Transport for Applied Mathematicians by Filippo Sanambrogio. During this time, I have gained some experience with the methods of convex analysis that are employed in optimal transport theory and come to appreciate the power and beauty of the Kantorovich problem. This fall, a working group in optimal transport was started by Professor Raghav um, Venkataraman of the University of Utah. I apologize for mispronouncing the name. This is an excellent professor, by the way. He told me to just call him Raghav, and he's really excellent. He's a new professor in our department. So if any of you go to the University of Utah and are looking for people in applied math, calculus of variations, this is an excellent new professor, by the way. Okay, so let me just continue. I was asked to give a lecture on the Kantorovich problem on September 30th, 2024. It was during my preparation for this lecture, after reflecting on the profound geometric intuition behind the Kantorovich duality statement, that I was inspired to pursue a doctorate degree in optimal transport. Through prior coursework and readings, I have built a graduate level understanding of analysis, manifolds, and PDE necessary to succeed in a PhD math program and jump into the field of optimal transport. Of course, I still have vast room for improvement in these subjects, but my experience will allow me to make rapid progress. I also have experience in Python and C++, which will allow me to pursue numerical solutions and algorithms related to optimal transport. Please see my resume transcript for relevant completed coursework. So I want to emphasize in this paragraph, um, I'm kind of trying to explain why I think that I'd be successful in the graduate courses. Okay, so an important part of the PhD is when you start the PhD, you're going to take graduate courses, and you need to be successful in those courses and pass the qualification exams. It's part of getting your PhD. And so they want to see some indication that, you would be prepared to be successful in the PhD courses. So that was the purpose of this paragraph. Continuing forward. On this note, please recognize that the course withdrawals on my transcript were due to educational preference rather than lack of motivation. There are 2 semesters of withdrawals, spring 2021 during COVID and fall 2022. I'm not here to make excuses. This was a mistake on my part. I maintained a grade of above 90% in every single course at the time of withdrawal, and I did not realize at the time that the withdrawal would seriously hurt my transcript. I want to assure you that I have dedicated an average of 30 plus hours per week to improve my mathematical ability continuously for the past 5 years, even during the 2 semesters that I withdrew. For some evidence of this claim, check out the lectures given on my YouTube channel, and then I link my YouTube channel and the lecture notes at my website, mathsheets.com. Most of this content was created during fall 2022, the semester I withdrew. Similarly, during spring 2021, I worked 30 plus hours a week for varsity tutors, tutoring collegiate math and physics. I have always taken an independent approach to learning material and view courses as supplemental to this learning process. In the following exposition, I will qualitatively describe why I am a valuable candidate for the position. I recognize that these statements require proof following acceptance and will therefore keep them brief. Okay, let's pause for a second and just talk about this paragraph here. So I had some withdrawals on my transcript, okay? And specifically, I had 2 semesters of almost straight withdrawals. That's like approximately 10 withdrawals. I'm not sure if it was exactly 10. But, ultimately the reason why I withdrew from these classes was due to educational preference, because I felt like I was either overwhelmed, not necessarily overwhelmed, but that I wanted to kind of self-study more, and I wanted to focus in on self-studying. So the first semester, spring 2021, it was a COVID semester, and I hated the online curriculum. I couldn't be online and focus for that many hours a day. And so I decided to transition towards online tutoring instead, which was more engaging for me because I was actively tutoring the student and kind of engaging in conversations with the student. It allowed me to stay focused. And then fall 2022, I was taking a lot of courses. I withdrew from almost every course except for classical physics 1. And the reason for those withdrawals was truly because I was upset. I felt like I was taking too many classes and wasn't really learning the material that I wanted to learn. Um, and it wasn't that I couldn't have passed those classes. I think that I could have done great and gotten A's in those classes if I really wanted to. It was more that I felt like I wasn't deeply learning the subjects. And so I wanted to do something different. And I withdrew from those classes and just focused on my YouTube channel and making videos on proofs and stuff like that. Um, and, that was a beneficial time for me. Looking back, I probably should not have withdrawn because it did hurt my transcript. And it wasn't like I was failing the classes. I could have stayed in those classes and been successful. Ultimately, I did not recognize at the time that these withdrawals would hurt my transcript to the degree that they did. And so I had to include this paragraph in my statement of purpose. And I just want to emphasize to you that, it's important to explain if you have some blemishes on your transcript, it's important to explain that briefly, to the admissions committee in your statement of purpose. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. So now I'm going to give some qualitative descriptions of why I'm a good candidate for the position. These types of qualitative descriptions are kind of commonplace in every application, and kind of the graduate people are going to read this a lot. And so this shouldn't really be the focus of your application. These types of statements sound good, they might sound impressive, but everyone's going to say them. And so ultimately, people just want to know quantitative reasons, explicit reasons why you're qualified, rather than um, like anecdotal character traits or whatever. But anyways, let's keep going. So Work ethic is my most valuable skill as a student and employee. Mathematics requires work to comprehend, and to this end I have committed an average of 30 plus hours a week to improve my mathematical ability consistently for the past 5 years. Passion is what drives my work ethic. Math has an intrinsic beauty and depth, which motivates me to learn and drives my commitment to the subject. Making mathematical progress is a collaborative effort, not a competition. I thrive in environments where I can work with others and partake in the sharing of knowledge toward a common goal. Teamwork is essential for success, and so is failure. Over the years, I have learned to fail countless times and not give up. I have faced challenges which seem insurmountable and held my ground. If I make a mistake, I move on and look for a learning opportunity. My biggest mistakes and flaws have often been the sources of the most growth and change in my life. For these reasons, I am not afraid to take risks and make mistakes. Sincerely, Conrad Morris, and then I signed it. Okay? So hopefully this gives you an idea of how to structure the statement of purpose. The most important thing that I want you to take from this document here is that you need to prioritize and emphasize letting the graduate admissions people know that you have some background in math, you kind of have some experience with some advanced topics, and that you are qualified um, to be successful in a PhD program. And that means you're qualified to basically be successful in the PhD classes, and then moving forward, you'd be successful in a research environment. Because that's not easy, and it's not obvious. Nobody knows for sure whether or not they can be successful until they actually do it, right? And so at the end of the day, you kind of want to qualify yourself to the admissions committee. And the best way to do that is not like these um, kind of boasting statements about your character, your work ethic, how good of a person you are, how much you care about mathematics, how much you love mathematics. You can obviously include that, to some degree, but it should not be the main emphasis of your statement of purpose. The main emphasis of your statement of purpose should be to, in a concise and short way, kind of describe some of your background, some of your interests, and why you think you're qualified for a position in mathematical research. So that's what I want you to take away from this statement of purpose. Okay. All right. So now those are all the documents I want to show you explicitly from my application. I will show you the other types of documents I have. So let me just see if they'll let me zoom in here. Okay, so I had a completed course list. I had a personal statement. These are the general documents. There might be additional specific requirements for the schools. And I had a statement of purpose. So personal statement and statement of purpose are slightly different. Personal statement is more about your personal history and kind of this is a good place to explain some of the maybe some blemishes on your transcript as well as some of these more qualitative aspects about why you love math. The statement of purpose needs to be more professional, and this is the more important document that you should be including in your application. Most of my applications, I did not include the personal statement. Okay. Then I had my transcript, my GRE score report. So this is another important document. I took the GRE. I received an 85th percentile, like an 840, I believe. Okay. I'm not going to pull up the score report because it has some personal information on it. But the point is that, I received an 85th percentile, which is good enough to put on an application. I think that anything you kind of want to aim for above like a 75%, I think. Depends on the university itself. But if you want to apply to universities that require a GRE, which is a good portion of them, not all of them. In fact, a large amount of schools don't require a GRE. Um, but I would recommend that you at least take the GRE and try to do well on it. It is a very difficult test. The only reason why I was able to score an 85th percentile on this test is because I'd spent years and years tutoring the undergraduate math curriculum. And so I was very fresh. At the time that I took this test, I was tutoring, 20, 25 hours a week or more. And I tutored the undergraduate courses, so like the Calculus 1, the Calculus 2, the Calculus 3, linear algebra, differential equations. over and over and over again. And a lot of the questions on this test are like advanced calculus and advanced like or semi-advanced linear algebra, more basic linear algebra, advanced calculus, um, medium difficulty linear algebra, and then and then some introductory like group theory. And yeah, I don't remember the exact topics that were on the exam. You'd have to look it up if you're studying for it, preparing for it. For me, I did not prepare for it explicitly because I just spent all my time tutoring at the math center, and I feel like that prepared me very well for the test. And I also just didn't know how difficult it was. If I got a worse score on it, then I would have gotten a study book and prepared explicitly for it and tried to do better. But I felt like, an 85th percentile was good enough. Um, but it was a very hard test. I mean, I was shocked at how hard it was because the questions themselves were difficult. They were advanced undergraduate level questions. They were not basic undergraduate questions. They were advanced undergraduate um, questions, and you had to complete them very quickly. So there was many questions on the test, and you had about two minutes to complete every question. So you really had to know, Green's formulas, change of variables theorems, like these kind of calculus three theorems, Stokes theorem, etc. At the calculus three level, and you had to know them well. You had to know how to do line integrals well. You had to know how to do all these calculus three concepts very well and very fast. And I just had so much experience tutoring in the math center that I was decently well prepared. I still wasn't super well prepared, but I was decently well prepared to do well enough on this test to get an 85th percentile. And this is the math subject GRE. So this is not a general GRE. The general GRE does not really matter unless you're an international student, in which case you have to take the general GRE and also some English language tests I'm not familiar with, just to demonstrate your knowledge of the English language primarily. But for any math program, or not for any math program, but for many math programs, you need to take this math subject GRE. Now, it's being phased out in recent years, and a lot fewer schools are really requiring it. Um, but that being said, I mean, there are a lot of schools that still require it. And so it's good to just take it. And if you can't do well on it, then I totally understand. It has zero reflection on your mathematical ability. I know that I would not have done well on this test if it wasn't for the fact that I was tutoring undergraduate math for years and years. And, ultimately, this test is not a reflection of your mathematical ability. It is not a reflection of your talent or your ability to do well in a PhD program. It's literally just a reflection of how quickly and effectively can you take a math test that's at an advanced undergraduate math level. So it's really about test taking ability, timing, speed, knowing the undergraduate, advanced undergraduate calculus and linear algebra and algebra, um, kind of well enough to apply them extremely quickly to solve problems. But speed is not necessarily like an indicator of mathematical ability or ability to succeed in a PhD level program. So I think it's a terrible test. I think it's not reflective of your ability to be successful in a PhD. I think they should phase it out. But that being said, if you want to maximize your your ability to get into the best schools, which I know many people do, then you are going to want to take this math subject GRE, and you are going to want to study for it. And be warned that it is extremely difficult. It's not an easy test. It's extremely difficult, and you're going to have to practice for it, um, or just really review your undergraduate education. So you kind of stay fresh in, calculus one, calculus two, calculus three, linear algebra in order to do well in this test. If you're taking this test your senior year, after you've taken much more advanced courses, and you don't study for this test, it's going to be insanely hard because, again, it's easy to get rusty on these earlier subjects. And, everyone gets rusty. It's a second law of thermodynamics. So, um, yeah. So, anyways, that's enough on that. Now, yeah, okay, so I think that's everything. And then I also had my unofficial transcript. So you're gonna have to get a copy of your unofficial transcript as well. Okay, so that covers my application, and now let me just show you. So these are some of the documents I included in my application. Let me just show you the schools that I got into. So I think I'm not sure exactly which schools I got into because I stopped checking the my applicant portals because I already accepted to a school to one of these schools. But I know for certain that I got into Tennessee. Um, I got into UCLA. I got into Utah and I got into MSU. And yeah, and then I got into Alberta for the master's program. Okay. So out of all these schools, the only ones that I believe that I got into, I got rejected, I believe, from everywhere else. Everywhere else rejected me, except for these five schools. Okay. And I'm really grateful for these schools' acceptances. Um, I'm grateful. Um, and all of these would have been excellent schools for me to go to. Just incredible opportunities to pursue a graduate level education. So I wish the best to all these universities, including the universities that rejected me, of course. Math is, math is a team effort, and we're all kind of working together um, across state borders and across international borders. So that being said, the school that I ended up deciding to commit to is University of Alberta, actually. So committed to a funded master's program at University of Alberta in mathematical physics, and I plan to apply for the PhD. In Canada, you have to complete the master's program first um, before you apply for the PhD. It's just how their system works. It's different than our system here in the US. But I did receive funding for this master's. And the reason why I chose this is first of all because it's a mathematical physics program. All the other programs were math programs, so they were just pure mathematics PhDs. This is a math this is a this Alberta program is a program in math, but it's specifically mathematical physics through the math department, and I have two excellent advisors that I met with, um, and we kind of I did an interview with them, and they really impressed me. Their names are Eric Woolgar and Brendan Pass. So we'll be working with them at Alberta, kind of studying the intersection between optimal transport and special relativity, maybe some general relativity. So one of the topics that really motivated me was differential geometry and general relativity. And so I wanted to go somewhere where not only could I study optimal transport and the analysis side of optimal transport, but I could also study differential geometry and kind of try to find an intersection between optimal transport and differential geometry, because that's a very active field of research. And so, because that was more aligned with my research interests, I chose this University of Alberta. Now, my second choice was probably going to be UCLA because they have excellent program in optimal transport and some of the top people in the world in optimal transport. And I planned on working with Wilfred Gongbo at UCLA, and I still hope to work with him one day because he's kind of look up to him almost like a celebrity. Um, but the reason why I decided against UCLA was because I was concerned that I would become too focused on analysis and the analysis side of optimal transport, and I would lose sight of the differential geometry, which kind of is where my heart lies. And also Alberta was just a really strong program, and there were other environmental reasons, economic reasons that also influenced my decision. Um, and so yeah, but I was really impressed by all of these schools. I mean, Tennessee and MSU are really good schools, really great schools, and I would have loved to go there. And also, the University of Utah is super underrated. I think one of the best. I mean, just such a good school in math. I'm obviously very biased, but the University of Utah gets a lot of hate, or people don't really realize. People kind of look it over. We have an insanely good math department. I mean, in pure and applied math, we have one of the best algebraic geometry programs in the world. We have excellent applied mathematicians working We have an excellent math biology department. And also just our entire applied math is like supercharged, like really, really good. I mean, this would have been a great school. The only reason why I didn't go to the University of Utah is because ultimately, I needed some diversity in my education. I needed to leave and go somewhere new to get a new educational experience. But I was really grateful that they did accept me back for a PhD. And I mean, I'm so grateful for my education at the University of Utah. It has been an unbelievably good education. I could not ask for any better. I was truly blown away. When I when I first came to the University of Utah, I wasn't expecting that level of an education because people in high school were kind of hyping up the Ivy League. So, if you don't get into an Ivy League, like, you're gonna have to go to the U as a backup option or something. Um, and so that was kind of the sentiment in high school. And I remember I came to the math advisor's office. This would be like a student advisor for planning your classes. And her name was Angie Gardner. And I asked her, I said, do you think that they have enough math classes for my entire 4 years here? Because I was used to, like in high school, I would just go crazy in math and just take as much possible classes as I could. And eventually I just ran out of classes to take. And so I asked her, do you think that your university has enough math classes for my 4 years here? And she just sat there and laughed. She laughed at me because she knew that I had no clue what I was getting into. And she was right. I mean, we have an insane program. I didn't even come close to exhausting the program during my undergraduate years. And I took, I think, 5 or 6 years to complete my undergraduate. And there was just so much opportunity, so many great courses, and so many great faculty. The professors were just unbelievably good. Um, I mean, I would give it 5 stars, honestly. Um, it's Yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful for my time at the University of Utah. Um, and I'm really grateful. I I was blown away, truly blown away, and I feel really lucky that I got my education here, my undergraduate education at the University of Utah. Okay, so yeah, if you have any additional questions, please let me know. I hope this was helpful. Um, and yeah, have a great day.